I guess we're live. I don't see the last two numbers in the countdown. Um, but so my name is Madeline Hoffman. I'm a host for KRTD Productions, or KRTD Media, and I am honored to be hosting today's today's show. I want to welcome Kamliah Harris of Inglewood, California, and formerly of the Movement for People's Party to the show. I also want to welcome Joe Evans from Idaho, who's going to be co-hosting with me tonight. And later on in the show, we'll be bringing in Craig Cayetano from the Green Party of New Jersey. I want to start out with a disclaimer here because Shane Coughlin, our executive director, reached out to MPP in order to get MPP's perspective on the story that we're going to hear about tonight. And he spoke with Laura, who's a volunteer and a founding member of MPP. And Laura declined. She said she did not need to or want to be on this show tonight. So we tried. In the interest of fairness, we tried, but MPP declined. So I'm going to start out by interviewing and asking Kamliah Harris a number of questions. And when I'm finished with that, we're going to bring Craig Cayetano on, and Joe Evans will be interviewing Craig. Or want to be on this show tonight. So we tried. In the interest of fairness, we tried, but MPP declined. So I'm going to start out by interviewing, asking Kamliah Harris a number of questions. And when I'm finished with that, we're going to bring Craig Cayetano. Okay, I think there was a little glitch there for a moment, but we can start now. And once again, Kamliah, welcome to the program. Can you tell us a little bit about your when you got involved with MPP and why? And then we can take it from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kamliah Harris, and I'm from Inglewood, California. If you know the phrase "Inglewood is up to no good," I'm actually from the city of Inglewood, California. And how I came across a movement for a People's Party was actually through my engagements on the left on Twitter. I was a follower, and he also followed me, Ryan Knight. He has amped up and all that stuff. It was long before he had his platform, and he started pumping up Movement for a People's Party. I had never heard of it before. I never heard of Nick Brana or any of the particular people that are with it. So I like the concept of them trying to build a new party on the left, because there's several independent parties on the right, but I don't think it's as many on the left. So I thought it was cool that someone was coming up with another option, and so I from there signed on through their website after the People's Convention they had, which included like Dr. Cornel West and Nina Turner and Jimmy Dore and some other
Chris Hedges.
Chris Hedges. There was other known figures on the left, and I enjoyed that particular event, and so I said, well, why don't I give this a try? I've never been like an organizer or anything, but I think it will be cool to bring this, into my community. So I signed the community agreements and everything, and I got onboarded to be a volunteer. Yes. And I also got onboarded to be a leader. So what they have was called hubs. Yes. And hubs are basically like groupings in different areas. So they have a regional hubs, and then they have state level hubs, and then they have local level hubs. I was going to be in charge. I was going to be in charge of my local, my city.
It's kind of like the Sunrise Movement, right? That kind of model where there's a hub and it branches out and includes people in the area, and then that circle connects to another circle to another circle.
Right, like I was starting mine like in like my city of Inglewood, and like I envisioned like growing it into my regional area, which is South Bay, which includes like the cities of like Hawthorne and Torrance and Redondo Beach and some other cities in my area. But it was going to start where I am, which is in Inglewood. That's where I
And
was.
that was in September,
Yeah, that was
early
September
of last year.
Yes,
Okay.
September 2020.
And you had
Is when I
also,
was
had you
onboarded.
not, okay, but you had also earlier in the year, you had worked for Tulsi Gabbard and
Yes,
right, and
I was
or supported
official.
Tulsi Gabbard.
I was an official online volunteer for Tulsi Gabbard. I apologize. I have like a delivery, but my mom's gonna get it. I actually live with my mom. I'm a normal person. Um, so so anyway, so yeah, I was basically onboarded twice in September. So I was basically trying to see about getting trained to actually start my position, and also be orientated to their different programs. Like they have Action Network where they have their database for like
yes.
voters and whomever that I was gonna like engage with to help build my team. They have their workspace, which is Slack, online, because there's no, with COVID and everything, we couldn't actually have like a physical brick and mortar or something like that. They wanted us all connected throughout the country to work. So Slack was that workspace. And then,
can I ask you a question related to that? And
yes.
that is, what issues brought, I know you said that the Movement for People's Party intrigued you because it was another independent political party on the left, and there aren't as many as there may be on the right. But what issues attracted you, or what are your main issues and concerns for policy, I mean?
Yeah, for policies, I think because of the type of people that they had at the People's Convention, I at the time I considered myself like straight up progressive. I've gone a little more socialist now, but then I was like kind of a staunch progressive, like looking for something that was about Medicare for all, that was about a $25 minimum wage, which was one of the things that I liked about the Green Party's platform. Was they had those kind of things, a job guarantee, reparations, all those different things that are known, popular, progressive issues. That's what I was hearing from that convention. So I couldn't help but automatically conclude that that's what the People's Party would be about. Of course, later I found out different, but at the time,
I was going to say,
I was automatically deducting or assuming, presuming that they were about like staunch progressive issues.
Yeah, and then you took a leave of absence in October, right, because of COVID.
My stepdad had COPD and other pre-existing conditions, and so he was going in and out of the hospital throughout October. So I had to like step away from MPP, like being in meetings and different things, because we were just like forming our groups. Off of the bounce of the People's Convention, people were coming in, for the first time and trying to, learn and get acclimated and see how things were. And I was just one of those people. Like I wasn't like outspoken or anything. Like I wanted to know what they already had, what was in the works, things like that. So when October hit, it was kind of, upsetting for me because, not only because what was going on in my family, but because I pretty much was new to this organization. I wanted to like get my footing, and and then this hit. And so, yeah.
And when you came back, what did you find when you came back to your circles and your different responsibilities? What did you, when you came back to MPP, what did you find?
When I came back, I have found that there were less people on our Slack workspace. Like, and I didn't know why. Like, until I started discovering, like in my working groups, I was in the organizing working group that dealt with more membership type stuff. And then I was also in media and messaging, which dealt with the press and, traditional and virtual and stuff like that. Social
Right.
media as well. So there was turnover in my two working groups among the leaders. And because I was also in circles, which are like little cluster groups within the working group. Um, I've noticed a difference in leadership from what I had, before October to, to that point in November, early November when I came back. And I thought that was even disturbing. I didn't understand what was going on. Even the vibe was different. Like before, it was a lot of, optimism and how can I help and things like that. And then when I came back, it was like a 180 from that. Like people, more and more people were silent. There were less people. Like I said, I didn't have any idea what was going on.
So with the Slack group, you never really saw anybody's face, like in a Zoom room like this. You wouldn't. It was all communication by messaging, right? By text
It was a
messaging.
mixture, to be
Okay.
honest. It was a mixture of course, we have Slack. Slack, has like channels and, it's more like a setup kind of chat, with threads and all those kind of stuff that you might see on a Facebook or something like that. It
Right.
is on the Slack workspace. So we had that communication point. But yeah, we also met virtually for meetings, for actual
Okay.
like formal business meetings and, connections and things like that. So I think those were the two main, I would say, communication tools that we actually used in MPP, and they still use.
And when did you find out about this petition drive that had started?
I found out about the petition. I think it was like 2 weeks after I came back, because like I said, I was pretty much disheveled when I came back. I really was like, I don't know what's going on. Why are there less people?
Mm-hmm.
Who's being upset about something? Like I didn't know. I thought everything was cool when I came back. And then, I started getting, signs that it just was not, the case. And so I know somebody in the Black voter circle who, I would get information, from time to time, and she circulated the petition to me in a DM. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at her like, what's this? And she's like, oh, it's a petition. Like, you should read it. And I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and read it and, see what it's about. And it was basically an outline of things that, speaking personally, I've noticed, but I never said anything about.
Okay.
Like I said, I was trying to get my footing in MPP overall. So I didn't really want to, jump into any drama or anything. But at the same time, I did notice these things. Like it wasn't like things that weren't uncommon in being observed.
And give us a couple of examples of the overall areas of concern.
One of the key areas of concern was about the finances. Financial transparency was like a big thing, and at the time they did not have like a transparency on a page on their website. They didn't have anything about their finances or financial background at all on their website. And it was because of the petition that they actually went ahead and put something up. The extent of what they revealed on that particular transparency page, even to this day, that's kind of choppy. But at least it was a petition point they did address in some way. Another thing was even leadership transparency. Because most of the time our working groups and the circles were getting directives from the top. And it wasn't exactly like democratic, like it wasn't some overarching decisions that we got to actually have a say or vote on at all. It was kind of like we heard from our working group leaders what the leadership was up to and what they wanted us to be involved with, because several of the working groups actually had like non-disclosure agreements, so it was something that had to do with the public. Yeah, we were tied to those to not leak anything and stuff like that. So
So you're saying that it was kind of a top-down leadership? Was
right,
there,
like
there
separate
bias?
from what they advertised.
Okay, different than what you would think you would have in a progressive political party. Because you said they had said horizontal, there was horizontal, but this was vertical, top down.
Right.
And
They
this last
advertise
question,
self-organizing horizontal structure to the public, but internally it
mhm,
was top down.
mhm. Yeah, and so last question before I bring Craig Cayetano on, um, uh, the bias question, was there a bias, and how many people signed this petition, and how was it received? We'll just get a brief answer on that, and then I'll bring Craig Cayetano on.
No problem. It got, I would say in the least it was 220 petitioners at minimum. There was a lot of points where there was, stoppage of circulation of the petition and going ahead with that because of negotiations being so tense.
Mm, mm.
But yeah, like the minimum was 220, but I think it got as high as even close to like 300 in the end.
And ultimately, in the back and forth and the negotiations, how many people were denied access to their MPP accounts when all was said and done?
When all was said and done, I'll back up a little bit. Like when we had the negotiations, we averaged at our negotiation meetings and even our own the full number of Black people that were removed. But the overall total, including other demographics, was at least 20. We never got the full amount of who got removed.
Okay. All right. So on that note, let me bring Craig Cayetano in. Craig is co-chair of the Green Party of New Jersey. And I guess I know that Craig wants to address some of the things you mentioned, but maybe Joe, you can.
Thanks for Shane for hosting this, Madeline for being involved, and Kamliah for her efforts in working to try to help and bring about change. Briefly, I'll just give a little backstory. I was a Bernie supporter back in 2015, organized in New Jersey. Obviously, after he dropped out in 2016, I decided to move on to the Green Party and basically still stayed friends with all my Bernie people. So as we were building in New Jersey, the Green Party, we basically saw that this whole draft Bernie movement was starting. And Nick Brana, who's the head of MPP, is to leave to start this alternative party that they were trying to start to roll out and pitch. So we attended as Greens. Jill Stein was there, Jimmy Dore was there, Jordan Sheridan was there. So a lot of big people were at this conference. And Nick Brana was there, and they were talking about a lot of different things. And most of what we were talking about was having this uniform consensus to build away from the corporate parties and the duopoly. So until they figured out what exactly that meant, they were supposed to help support some of the other alternatives that were out there, the Greens, maybe socialists, people just run independent. So in New Jersey, as we were building and we would cross paths, it just seemed like there was a little bit of traction as they started to formulate. So MPP is not new. It's been actually around, and they started filing. If you go through now, thankfully, they've declared this and shown this, but it's back in 2017, right around this People's Convergence Conference. They actually raised $162,000 because I was there. I took a photo of the check. I have the photo from then, all my friends I was there. I was with them as they did their draft Bernie petition into Sanders's offices, and the whole time, and we were trying to plan what to do next because people are good people. We're all good forward to organize and win and try to change his power structure. So of course I'm going to support whoever wants to start something, but I'm also going to hold them accountable and ask questions. So as we roll into 2018 and they finally have their website, they have a little basic platform formalizing, we were getting ready to run our congressional races in New Jersey. We had a few key races, and we saw that they had their website up. I'd even heard that they were going to go out and endorse and offer an endorsement process. So they did reach out to Tim Canova, who everybody knows through the circles. He had challenged Debbie Wasserman Schultz in 2016, decided to then run independent. So I'm like, great. MPP at first can be an ally in terms of like our revolution in certain cases is an ally to people that are trying to run and offer endorsement and support in whatever capacity. So I had sent in multiple email inquiries about endorsement process. They had a brief form to fill out. And I know other Green allies across the country were doing that too. And we never heard back. At the same time, I know that they were trying to reach out to the labor movement and try to work with them and try to bring some people that were kind of, I guess, kind of just in the weeds, and they wanted to try to get their support. So circle back in September of 2018, we get a call from our friend Tom Bias. He was a big labor organizer in New Jersey, a very good friend of the Greens. And he had interactions with Nick Brana himself and said that Nick had approached them about trying to get them in New Jersey. And basically, Tom at the point had said that there's no way forward in New Jersey without the Green Party, because the Green Party has been there. The Green Party has been fighting for 15 back in 2015. And everything around New Jersey and progressive politics is going to include the Green Party. So he got us all on a group call. And when we talked to Nick Brana, it just didn't come across as sincere. It didn't come across as passionate to try to work together. It was more of this divisiveness. And he basically refused to acknowledge the endorsements that we had sent out and requests, saying that whoever was in charge of that is no longer working on that. But somebody else should have taken the helm. You're out there in the space showing endorsement for Tim Canova. Respond to these campaigns. Be an ally. And even Tom at this point said, look, endorse their candidates right now. They don't want money. Why can't you just verbally put their stuff out on your social media spaces and just say, hey, we're good allies? And he still refused at that point. So we kind of reached an impasse that there was no way MPP was going to move forward in New Jersey to do their labor work without us. So not too long, a couple of weeks might have passed. And then Carol, who's one of their like core people, reached out to me and said that she apologized, and anything I ever wanted to post on their Facebook and accounts, I can go to town, anything green related. And I appreciate it. I said, thanks. So that relationship worked for almost 2 years. Circle into, 2020, I would say early 2020, they were starting to organize. They did a lot of their monthly meetings, and I was still involved because I'm involved in OR. I try to, if I can attend a meeting and be a good ally, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be supportive. And I want them to work with us as we want to really work with them. We wanted to try to do this. And it just seemed like every call that they had, their big calls, and they did have good turnouts on Zoom and stuff. I'll give them that. But it was just always negative towards the Greens. The branding isn't there, or something they would say, instead of looking at it that, hey, look, maybe we can all come together. And the thing is ballot access. I mean, the Greens have had a rough time, but we had a lot of states that were just on threads holding on to ballot access lines. It would have been good support to try to endorse some of these candidates. So once I found out in early 2020 that they were not going to really support endorsing or considering an endorsement of any candidates again. So now it's 2018, it's 2019, and then it's 2020. 3 years of existence of not endorsing or supporting any candidates for office. And they're literally just punting the ball down the field. I realized that my energy with them isn't really making any sense. So that's why I kind of fell off. And it must have been right after a few people had asked, why not endorse Howie Hawkins or Gloria LaRiva, or a few other candidates' names were floated out there. And yeah, I agree. At that point, I just kind of left it. But part of my concerns, and I had brought up over the years, was the financials, the money. Where is the money going? Is Nick Brana, are the core team taking a salary? Why wasn't that ever disclosed until I'm hearing just recently they started to put some financials out there? Leadership structure. Look, the Green Party obviously is not perfect. We have a lot to do and a lot to work towards. But, a decentralized leadership or horizontal leadership should be the role and role model. And I think that if they worked so hard on their media, and they have great media, great graphics, great that, why can't they create a safe space for everybody and be horizontal at the same time? So that was part of our concern. And then little platform stuff. We didn't see reparations in their platform. That was some of the key things. So we know that they're going to do their thing, and that's fine. But I think that they need to be accountable and held accountable to some of these other issues that we've talked about.
So one of the things you mentioned was Gloria La Riva and the Socialist Party for Socialization and Liberation and several of the other candidates that were out there at the time. When we start looking at left unity candidates, which was what MPP was trying to pull together, that whole left unity shift to be able to pull away from the Democrats. Why is it they decided to completely branch out on their own and just go their own way rather than work with any of the platforms or any of the people that had already established left-based platforms? Because we had 7 left unity candidates running for president this last session.
Yeah, and honestly, look, MPP, I think personally, and I say it, and again, I think personally, most of their politics still does tend to lean towards the Democratic Party. Obviously, they've been very cautious the last year, and they didn't want to get too divisive with everything. You got to look at their messaging; it kind of changed a little bit. They weren't as radical or pulling a lot of people away until after the elections have ended now, of course. But I think that their obligation to the left and progressivism, they should have held at least debates and forums with these candidates and say, hey, look, we're not going to endorse, but hey, we're going to give everybody their 10 minutes, 20 minutes to speak and talk about their policy and let you guys decide. Even with their convention, and again, everybody knows their convention was a big turnout and big positive push for them. What people don't realize is that behind the scenes, there were some people really upset that there weren't Greens invited and Green candidates specifically invited to speak. It was, I think Chris Hedges was the only one that was able to technically speak upon that there's alternative option. And it could have been a better handled. I just think they could have done everything so much better the last couple of years. And I'm glad to see some of the people starting to wake up to it.
Well, I know one of the things we've been heavily advocating for in a number of theaters right now is the third party candidate debates. The National Convention controls the 2 parties, nobody else is allowed in. But MPP easily could have facilitated a third party candidate debate. We literally could have had all 6 of the major left candidates stand up on stage and debate their issues. Most of them would have agreed with each other, but that's beside the point. What do you think is going to happen now that MPP's clearly dropped the ball?
I think that it's starting to show that there's good activists. And again, the people, most of the people are good people. They're wanting to do good work. And a lot of people want to be led. They want to be stewarded, but they want to know that their efforts are appreciated and that they're actually going to be valued. And when it comes down to trying to vote on stuff, even back before I left and their big, like couple hundred Zoom people meetings monthly, they wouldn't put polling questions. They wouldn't ask questions. I'm like, why aren't they asking for input? It seemed like it was very just a front, that you really had to have the right channels or inside channels to get involved with stuff. And again, I know there was a lot of Slack circles and it seemed like work was getting done, but there are some stopping points. But I think if you really were sincere and you wanted to resolve it, you would totally do it.
How do you feel the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, are going to interact as they realize MPP hasn't stepped up and done their fair share of the work?
I have some allies in some DSA chapters still, and again, I think that they're also starting to be aware of it. I hope that most people will look at the alternatives that are there, that are real alternatives. We work so hard to try to pull, again, inside and outside strategies. We have ran an amazing campaign there that almost won, and she's DSA and Green friendly. They work together. I know a lot of other chapters throughout the country do this. I know Pittsburgh is good. I know on the West Coast too. So I think that if you're going to proceed ahead, we need to just literally look at the fact that MPP is still not technically a party. They are filing to try to become a party, but they need a certain amount of signatures in each state. Are you really pulling people away from the Democratic Party? Are you really pulling these unaffiliated or independent voters? Or are you just people from the Green Party or from other parties. That's the thing. I want to see how they're really going to do this, and if they're really going to put olive branches out there, because there's states that they're a real tough time getting ballot lines. Now, are they going to throw away their whole edict of getting money out of politics and not taking PAC money? I don't know, because again, technically, look at their filings. They are PAC. So it's really one of those things. And I get into some people with the Justice Democrats approach. And look, the goal is to get money out of politics and not have money infused and entrenched. So are they going to have to compromise more of their values to try to buy ballot lines and buy ballot access? Because I don't know if they're going to be able to get boots on the ground and get signatures.
Kamliah, what is your response to what Craig is saying here? And how would you navigate it?
Yeah, he has a lot of like great points and a lot of questions that are still to this day unanswered. It's like he said, this organization started in 2017 and started out as Draft Bernie. They also merged into themselves another organization called Burn the DNC. They also had like a partial merge with Our Revolution Los Angeles, you know, and the infrastructure was not there at the time, you know, that they did all of this. But they little by little have found like this hub structure that they have was workable. So they started rolling with that, but it wasn't fleshed out, you know, because the way the leader, I mean, if you look at the leadership, the composition of the leadership, these people don't really have the kind of backgrounds that you may think that they have. I mean, even Nick Brana, yes, he was involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign, but he was an intern. You know, like at one point they elevated him to like a coordinator role, but he only lasted 2 weeks and then was demoted back to an intern. So, I mean, if you really do a deep dive into the backgrounds of each of the people that are in the leadership, because the way the leadership structure is kind of multi-tiered, like the way it's vertical, it's like multi-tiered, multi-layered. So at the very top is Nick Brana, who serves as the national coordinator. So that's his formal title. And then you have like 9 other individuals that are like department heads or working group leaders, making major decisions for the entire organization that trickles down. So for instance, with political outreach, that group, they've done some homework on ballot access, but not thorough homework on ballot access. And so yeah, you seeing like pop-ups of like Ohio or Maine or Colorado and California, not because they actually have like full-blown state parties or groupings in those states. It's because they found out what minimum they had to do to in the Secretary of State, in the capital of that state, to go file paperwork. They have like a lawyer or two, on their side that's like giving directives to like, hey, go find out about the paperwork and then go file it. And then next thing you know, they're making a big splash. I apologize for that. They're making a big splash announcement like, oh, we have California, oh, we have Colorado, oh, we have Maine, and all that kind of stuff, when they actually don't. What they do have is that first step done. Yeah. That's all they have done with each of those states. In fact, there's 11 states I heard that it's required for people to run. Like MPP has to run these people in order to get ballot access. And they're nowhere near that because they've been, dismissive and mistreating of their state hubs, their actual state groups. Some of the leaders have been kicked out. Like even in my state of California, my regional coordinator, Jerry Perez, was pushed to resign because he wouldn't, kiss their behinds, for example, on the stuff that they were exploiting him to do. Same thing for the co-coordinator. And both of these two were involved with Our Revolution Los Angeles merge as well. And so there's a lot of crossings of storylines, crossings of, drama that the right at the top had permeated down into the organization. And that stuff, those little things, trivial things, but necessary things, caused the petition to come about, because it was a pattern. with the leadership, that they had no sense of urgency. They had no care for the volunteers and the organizers and their work. They had no respect. In fact, they called our groups fan groups. They treated us like groupies and fans to MPP instead of actual workers. And we were the labor, if you will, of MPP. And you see on the left how we're always talking about like the Amazon workers. And we're talking about, other unions and things like that. Treat us like a union when we approached them with our petition. Stuff like that. They took it personally, and it's like, no, there are things that are required that we have to do, even by law. I mean, so even if you submitted, bylaws to a Secretary of State or whatever to file, and stuff, and to be like a 527 or whatever,
Yes.
you had to submit bylaws. How come you're not revealing those bylaws to the organizers, like myself, and a lot of my peers that were organizers and that were, on the regional, state, and local levels? Why don't we have this information? What are you hiding from us? And so they're doing a lot of damage control, over what's being revealed about them at this point.
And do they have, I mean, do they know, or do they have people on the ground who are going to actually do the hard work of building support for the policies? I mean, it's one thing to proclaim independence from the Democrats and Republicans, but then you need to have, you need to work hard. And I guess if the people on the ground don't have a sense of connection to the people at the top, that work is probably not going to get done, or not get done well. I don't know, Craig, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, if you don't have that connection where your leadership actually cares, where your leadership is concerned about what could be causing like the work to, not be at the level that it should be, things like that, then that's a disservice not only to them as workers, but to the work that they're, kind of mandated to go out and do in communities. I mean, like, I was cautious personally about going into my community because I didn't know how legit, especially after I came back from what happened in my family, I didn't know how legit, MPP was. And I was like, I'm not going to step out into my community and then cause some kind of, disturbance, or, oh, you wasn't, I want to have a package to deliver to my community and say, this is legit. This is a good thing to be a part of. This is, good to build up. But if I don't have that backing from my own leadership, if I don't have that backing from, others in the organization, then how much good can I possibly do? I mean, to the points of what Craig was mentioning with some of the, challenges with the Green Party getting out, if I don't have, that kind of support, if I don't have that kind of backing, we're talking about an organization in MPP that still to this day does not have professional level resource documents like handbooks, manuals, things like that. Like, there's nothing like formal in their infrastructure. And so even part of the petition points that were also laid out to them was, we need a real infrastructure. We don't need this whole you're breadcrumbing or you're future faking us. Let me put it this way to be more blunt. They were celebrity left centric, not people centric. And for a people's party, you would think that they would put the organizers and the volunteer experience first. No, they were about being groupies. Like, that's why you see Nick Brana on Jimmy Dore, trying to make big splashes. But when you talk about the infrastructure of MPP and the workers who get the grunt of all these people he's attracting, that's where the disconnect is really.
And on that, if I could just follow on that, I think that, look, if I don't know something, I'm not just going to keep not knowing it. I'm going to bring people in that know it and work with them together and try to make this work. I want to take this movement serious. I'm going to bring people in and work with them. So as I say, I think that what their miscues were not being an ally to the Greens. There were a lot of Green issues a couple of years ago with getting ballot access. So, for example, back in 2018, Ohio, we needed 3% of the vote, and Constance, I know, reached out to MPP for an endorsement, which fell on deaf ears like all the endorsements we sent. Imagine if MPP would have just put their logo and threw out a couple posts for Constance and say, it's important, it's vital to keep Constance in the media and tell Ohioans to come out and vote for her to get 3%. We know that she's probably not going to win, but as a good ally, we're going to come out, we're going to do some campaigning on that end, use social media to keep the ballot line. It's going to be so hard to get ballot access back in Ohio. I think you need like 45,000 signatures. It's ridiculous. Now roll into last year, COVID-19. You have Green Party still trying to hold on to our ballot lines that we have. And we're forced to go out in the street in a pandemic and get signatures. Most of these states were not letting that go. And we've lost ballot access in New York. Imagine if MPP would have said, okay, hey, we're not there yet, but as an ally, we're going to support Hawkins in New York. Make sure you're going to vote for Hawkins in New York. You want to get at least the percentage there to keep the Green Party ballot line there. You could have said, you know what, in this state, you can go PSL. You could have said, you know what, Peace and Freedom Party, keep them, get their access. You could have picked and chosen and used your space and your base that you've built to be a good ally and say, hey, we're not there yet, but this is how we're going to proceed. We need to keep these ballot lines so that when we want to run, we have an access point. And I think that's their biggest fallacy, is not realizing that the Greens would have been great olive branch.
So one of the things we all have in common here is we've all been involved in grassroots movements and building grassroots organizations. You know, the Green Party's been a perpetual grassroots movement for the last 40 years now. Several of the organizations that you work with, Kamliah, in LA and Craig in New Jersey, you know, these are grassroots. They start at the community level. And as we all know, when communities realize there's a problem, people come together and they don't always have the right skill sets in order to make it happen. You brought it up, Craig, that when you're missing a skill set in your you reach out and you find it. You know, you look for people. And that's how grassroots starts, as you bring in the people from the bottom. Everything I'm hearing about MPP is it was a top heavy, it was a top down, strongly authoritarian, move. Do you think
yes,
that
I agree with that? It was, yes. In fact, we even have documentation that we could submit as a receipt where it literally said that we were not to cross our memberships with the Green Party or DSA or things like that. Like they was really like, you need to be MPP only and don't have cross memberships, which I thought was ridiculous personally, because I was like, that's like saying you can't be a member of Black Lives Matter and the NAACP at the same time. That just sounds weird. Grown people are going to do what they feel in their hearts to do, what they feel in their experience to do, and so it's vital that there's an understanding of what these leaderships expect of their members, expect of their volunteers and organizers, because at the end of the day, it's us, like you said, putting boots on the ground, going into our communities and presenting this stuff, because our communities are not going to be apologetic if we're full of it. If we're full of any kind of crap or whatever, they're not going to look at us and favorably. They're going to be like, well, what are you doing here? Really? You just want our votes and that's it? You don't want to do nothing for our communities? Like, that's how they will look at us. And so I've been personally very cautious about taking myself out into my community and promoting MPP, because if we drop the ball there, we may not be able to get that momentum back or that surge of people back. We have to do it the right way.
That's a big problem with politics as they are. It's business as usual. Is politicians come in, promise the world, and disappear. And that's why we're all trying to do something different. Sorry, Joe.
Well, it's one of the problems with third-party politics all the way around. Green parties have the problem where they've had strong-headed individuals come in and take an authoritarian approach to the way the party was managed. Jill Stein, love an awful lot of what she did, but she literally went around the party in order to accomplish her presidential run, and achieve the vote she did. And there were an awful lot of people that weren't particularly happy with that approach. In a certain sense, it was a similar approach to what Howie Hawkins tried this last time as well. But I mean, literally here you have someone with access to media. You have Nick Brana. He's on the Jimmy Dore show. He's on the Young Turks. He's talking about movement for a people's party almost everywhere, and everybody's blowing smoke up. Anyway, so you definitely see, I find it funny that they would be accusing the worker bees of being fanboys when everything points to Nick Brana just being the biggest fanboy of all. How do you see a future for MPP?
Sorry.
Craig?
On the road.
Oh, Kamliah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kamliah.
I was going to say, like, personally, I gave MPP kind of like a 9-month window. And the reason why I say this is because they promised the public, not just internally the volunteers and everything, that they were going to have a founding convention, meaning that they were going to actually hold elections for the first time in MPP's life, if you will. And they were actually going to have, constitution and bylaws, adopted and everything like that. They also was going to, adopt a platform, because the current platform that they're using is a variation of Bernie Sanders' 2016 Democratic primary platform, his campaign. So they needed to have an original platform as well installed. And so these were things that they were going to be doing at this founding convention. But I got word that they're possibly going to extend even hosting that because of, these developments that are coming out about, about them, these truths that they don't want to deal with in any form. It's like you all said, you've reached out to them to come on and address these issues. Other indie media outlets have gave the same offer, and they've declined because they want this to go away. They want us to be silent as the whistleblowers, if you will, of MPP. They want us to, like, basically just disappear so they can go back to the same, norm. I say this to the extent of like a toxic norm that they, have built. So, until there's real leadership in MPP and it comes with sense of urgency, they're pretty much going to be done probably before we even see January 2022.
Craig, what do you think?
So, and again, most of the people involved are unaware of this, and they're good people just trying to do good and find a better way for us. But I think that in the end, if this does not work, which it's trending towards, it's just proven that they've done more damage to the space in the last 3 years than any good that they could have accomplished. I haven't seen as much good as come out of this. You have campaigns reaching out to try to keep ballot lines and ballot access as Greens, obviously. I have to just revert back to that. It saddens me as allies that we couldn't agree to what we said we were going to do at this People's Convergence Conference and try to get anybody elected outside the duopoly. And here we are. Nobody's gotten elected. It's sad. But I think that is people have to come to it to their own. You can't force people. You can only tell, you can only advise and say what you know, but everybody's gonna have to come to their own point and realization to realize that this is not growing and this isn't safe, this isn't productive, and this isn't the best way to use their time. Their time is invaluable. And I think that as they keep spinning everybody around for another year, eventually everybody's gonna start to wake up. And it's sad that I've been trying to reach out to Jimmy Dore too. I emailed him a few times and still haven't had a chance to talk to him about it, to just give him the other side, to let him ask the questions. Because for MPP to succeed, I'll be honest, Nick Brana has to go. He has to step down. He has to relinquish it. I don't think you're going to be able to put a better face on that party at this point, or that movement at this point, with him at the helm. He's got to step down. The other people can stay in until they phase out. But just like the Green Party, people say, you know, who's the leader? Who's the leadership of the Green Party? We have a rotating steering committee. You're elected. After a couple of years, your term is up, and you got to move on. You can't stay in that role. And that's the same thing that needs to happen there. It's already 3 years in. They need to start to take accountability for this, what's going on, and honestly, step down, Nick Brana.
So you mentioned coalition building earlier, Kamliah. You know, working across party lines, working across group lines, finding those common causes, and the way that MPP just abandoned that process. What do you see is, especially with regards to coalition building, the Green Party, Social Party for Socialization and Liberation, and the Peace Party, as far as building coalitions to mutually support each other so that, you know, they're not stealing votes away from each other in the process, you know, finding an organic way to replace MPP with these already existent political parties?
I would say when it comes to coalition building, I think it comes back to that olive branch that Craig mentioned. I mean, you have to be an organization that actually cares about the overall dynamics, like ending the duopoly, for example. You actually have to care about the people. Because if you're trying to build a quote unquote people's party, you need to care about the people and not tokenize the issues, be authentic about the issues, be sincere about the issues. Even with candidates, if MPP is not running candidates, for example, they need to support the Green Party. They need to support the Working Families Party. They need to support DSA. You know, so I mean, in other words, be honest with the public. You know, to a blunt level, be honest, because at the end of the day, you know, there are people who are going to see through this. I mean, we have millions of people that are non-voters in this country. Like, they don't affiliate with themselves with any party whatsoever. You know, they're even probably registered as like a no party preference, you know, because that's an option here in California. You could be no party preference. So in understanding that and where you are as an organization, you need to be realistic, not have blinders on, and be an olive branch to those who are further established, like the Greens. I mean, these other entities are further established. They're further along. Even PSL, you know, Peace and Freedom, you know, learn from them on how to, you know, build a party and how to, you know, coalition and everything else. Because MPP, to be honest, really doesn't know what they're doing. They're
And,
just
you know,
thinking they can bounce off a celebrity and that everything will be okay.
You know, the recent polls show, Kamliah, as you're talking about this, recent polls show that a full 60% of those polled want a third party. They want another choice. And I don't know that it really matters to a lot of the people out there, whether it's MPP, PSL, Green Party, but it's the independence from the two political parties does matter and matters a great deal. So the opportunity is here to build across these political lines if the people involved will take advantage of it. And I think, you know, we've watched so much unfold since the election of Joe Biden, you know, where 8 Democrats blocked they blocked a minimum wage from going through. And, you know, you had all this, there's a lot of drama, face it, and everybody sees it. And a lot of people are turned off to it. So there's a space, there's a place for this kind of third party movement, coalition building, as you're all talking about.
And the leadership has to be there. So even if
Yes.
there is another option that's being built, the leadership has to do right by building up the organization, being centric to volunteers and, you know, and stuff, instead of the celebrity left, as I call it. And, you know, and they have to be like really authentic about the policies and the issues. I mean, that's what I admire about the Green Party. I mean, like, I voted Jill Stein in 2016, you know, and I also voted, you're talking about PSL, I voted Gloria La Riva this past cycle. because of the policies that they
Right.
brought forth in their platforms. And, that's how centric we need to be, as an electorate, even overall, regardless of your political spectrum, we need to be about policies. And you will oftentimes find that the policies that are most popular, that people consider we most need in this country, is in independence, Greens, libertarians, those entities is where you will find those policies, and we need to get the leaders in, so then they could be the ones to install them, bring them to the floor, get them voted on, things like that.
Okay, so one of the things I want to bring up, we've complained an awful lot about MPP this session already, and we understand that they have made mistakes. But the big thing about a conversation like this is, what sort of lessons are we going to take away from it? How can we learn, and how can we build? How can we succeed where MPP has failed? Or for that matter, we're looking at 50 years of third-party candidates. Libertarian Party's been around for 50 years. Green Party's been around for almost as long. They came along shortly after. Party of Socialization and Liberation. You're looking at, even before that, 100 years ago, the Communist Party in America. What can we take away from, that activists, and this would be like lessons learned from Green Party advocates who tried to push for the recruiting of Jesse Ventura, to run in place of Howie Hawkins. Is that a bad thing to cater to name recognition for less celebrity versus the people's issues? Or what do you think, Kamliah? What's one of the best lessons learned? How would you?
I would say have a variation of what you're saying with, I would say, like the Justice Democrats, for example. I mean, like Cori Bush was on the ground, organizer, activist through the Black Lives Matter movement in Missouri because of what happened in Ferguson. You want to find people like her to run for office, but definitely on the independent side, like, to find someone like her to run Green, for example. I mean, we need to have more of those kind of candidates in, those leftist independent parties, because that, I think, will attract people. I mean, we even had a Green get elected in Baldwin Park for mayor. That was one of our shockers here in California this past election cycle, because we never thought a Green would get elected, and they did. And it was like, well, it can be done, people. If we just understand how that happened and replicate it, then then we can get there. Also, like, policy wise, I mean, you talk a lot about those struggles of getting ballot access, or even the Democrats had tried to take the Greens Party's ballot access away in certain states, like Wisconsin, for example, Pennsylvania.
Yes. New York.
We got to be centric and behind those issues. I mean, we general strike for, the unions and stuff. How about general striking, the DNC when they take Greens ballot access away through the courts? We need to be behind election integrity, and, and electoral policies that are, continuing to make this country have unequal, unfair elections. So, because that's a form of voter suppression too. People don't understand, like, not having, the most options from which to choose governance is voter suppression and regression. That's basically saying you're taking options away from me, and I want to vote for these people, but they can't, they're not treated equally. So that's why you see all the rhetoric about ranked choice voting, star voting, all those different things, because we need a real system in this country, and we have not had it for over a century.
Craig, yeah, what do you think? Kamliah, thank you for that answer.
Yeah, thank you, Kamliah. You're right, and you hit it head right on the head. You hit it right on the head. You have to be in the community. You have to be organizing. You have to be honest and be sincere. Be on the streets. Be in the streets. Know what's going on. Otherwise, you're not going to build much. And honestly, then you come across as Democrats or Republicans just placating for votes. So what happens is, here in New Jersey, since last year, we have to go through this too. We only need like a few hundred signatures in certain races, but like our bigger races, you need 800 signatures. So we still would have to go out into the streets in the pandemic. In the meantime, we're also trying to build a base and build a party. And we had mutual aid organizations going on. I was involved in one that I created in Passaic County. My friend Zelly Thomas is Black Lives Matter Patterson. He's all over running every day, something there. And other allies in New Jersey were doing mutual aid and are still doing mutual aid. There's people working on renters issues, because what people don't realize is the moratorium is going to end. All these people are going to be facing eviction. So that's another major topic you got to be prepared for. So we're in the movements. A lot of Greens are in the movements, but sometimes they don't, they're scared or afraid to identify as Green. But we're there. We're in these orgs. We're in, even things like Sierra Club. We're in these orgs that have been around forever. But we see that they keep trying to herd you back and have a tendency to just only support the Democrats. So we need to just speak up, be vocal, be seen, be heard. And I think that it's going to take time. Don't false promise people. I said when I joined the Greens in 2016, I dedicated 10 years. I figured, let's see where we're going to get in 10 years in New Jersey and make this work. And it's going to take time. We've grown. Our numbers have grown. Our registered Greens went from like 2,977 in 2017. We're almost at 12,000 now. And it's a slow progression, but we're growing. And I would love to hit 20,000 this year. But when you have corporate media, you have even some independent media not telling you who's running and giving you your choices, it makes it really hard to grow. So we have to use our allies, and our Revolution and MPP, again, had a great opportunity to be an ally, and they fell on it. And I think that the Greens are just working to learn. We always are getting younger. We're getting more diverse. We're being more inclusive. Nobody's perfect. We have to go and learn from each step. But a lot of the older people are starting to cycle out, and we have younger people getting power. We have a great youth caucus in the Greens. We have a great chapter in New Jersey that's been leading on a lot of issues. And I think that you're going to see more efforts to try to get more of the caucuses involved. We need more support with Latinx caucus.
I love that expression, celebrity left, as opposed to people left, because that says a lot about this too. I mean, when you've got people with name recognition trying to shortcut the process. You had asked about Jesse Ventura earlier, Joe, and I think, if name recognition isn't enough, clearly, and it's something and it helps, but this is hard work, like Camila's saying, and she's going to go out to her community and talk to people. She has to have something that she can feel comfortable about and confident in. When she says, we're going to do this, she has to feel that there's some degree of probability that it will happen. Otherwise, she'll be like every other Democratic Party or Republican Party politician, promising things she can't deliver. And I think one of the lessons we all need to learn when we, as organizers or as third-party people, there's no shortcuts here. There's nothing we can just go snap and all of a sudden we have this. It's something that takes a lot of hard work, and Camila, you were ready to do it. Probably still are.
Yeah, I still am. And I even give warnings to the public that, have standards when you come into these organizations. I mean, Craig touched on that accountability piece. Don't just be, accountable to like the politicians. I mean, we're always, holding the politicians accountable, but your leaderships and your organizations need to be held accountable too, to the same standard, because it is through their work that, the party grows, what I'm saying? Or if you're like a mutual aid entity, that grows. Or if you're, some other form of a 501c4 political social welfare group, that's where it grows. I mean, everything starts and ends at the top of your organization. And if they're not about the vision and the mission and the purpose of the organization, then it is going to, falter. It is going to fall. It's going to, make everyone's experience in it like really bad or toxic or narcissistic or whatever. So it's like, please, like, know your rights, know your civil liberties, just like you would, anywhere else in these organizations. And then also have those standards to say, I want my experience to go.
The years that we've had to overcome. the Party of Socialization and Liberation because of all of the baggage. And yet, in less than 3 years, MPP created baggage, which they may not be able to recover from and carry forward. So from one perspective, we're looking at Green parties. It's young, it's growing. The dynamics are changing, the policies are changing, they're reflecting the needs of the younger people. And you're seeing more of a movement towards that localized socialist movement, you know, that independence that gives the communities their power back, which is a key platform for the Green Party. It's one of the things that made it a great left libertarian party back in the day, as it created its system of policies. And I really want to thank you, Kamliah, today, and Craig for coming and joining us, and Shane Coughlin for, of course, providing the opportunity for us to have this conversation today. And with
Yes,
that,
thank you, Shane.
Madeline,